Mark Rogers TV talking some Virginia Tech football with the Hokies on the practice field for the first time this spring on a Tuesday night. So they've got one practice in. We bring in Mike McDaniel from inside the ACC and also Fighting Gobbler to help us sort out the issues facing Justin Fuente and his staff this spring. Mike, it's always a good discussion. Let's start at the quarterback position where Jared Evans is off to the NFL draft. And there's a number of quarterbacks in camp, like 6 or 7, but it pretty much comes down to 3 guys battling for the position that may come down to that final week in August. But obviously what happens over the next month is going to go a long way in determining the starter.
For Virginia Tech, it's good too, Mark, because the 3 prominent figures at the quarterback position this fall are all in spring camp. So they're going to have A.J. Bush, who is a transfer from University of Nebraska and also Iowa Western Community College, and he's coming in as a redshirt junior. He'll be able to contribute right away, depending on how the Hokies decide to use him. They have redshirt freshman quarterback Josh Jackson, who was rumored by Justin Fuente and the coaching staff, who had been pushing for the starting quarterback job last year when Gerard Evans ultimately won it over Jackson and Brendan Motley. And then the third quarterback in camp is a true freshman early enrollee, Hendon Hooker. He's 6'5", but only about 190 pounds. I think ideally what the Hokies would do is start either Josh Jackson or A.J. Bush and hopefully redshirt Hendon Hooker to put a little bit more weight on him. But if he's prepared, and prepares well this spring and has a good summer and puts some weight on, I mean, he's definitely not ruled out of the quarterback competition at all heading into the fall, especially if he performs well in the practices this spring and starts to pick up the offense quickly, as a lot of the coaches anticipate here at this point. So it looks like while there are 6 or 7 guys in camp for the Hokies at the quarterback position, Justin Fuente had mentioned that the 3 guys receiving most of the reps there were Jackson, Hooker, and A.J. Bush.
Mike, there's so much influx of personnel at the collegiate level, obviously, with these guys lasting for 3 or 4 years. But one issue has not been the right side of the offensive line in recent years with, of course, Jonathan McLaughlin, a 4-year starter, Augie Conte, mostly the starter for the past 3 years, but they're going to have to finally address that side of the line here in 2017.
They are. I mean, they have multiple guys on the roster right now who could fill those roles. They were hoping at right tackle specifically, which is most likely the more important of the two, considering the amount of players on the roster that can play guard. They probably only have 4 or 5 guys who can slide in at either one of the tackle spots. They were hoping Parker Osterloh, who's going to be a senior this upcoming year, would fit in to that right tackle spot, but he's injured once again here in spring camp, so he's not going to be able to compete for that tackle spot until sometime late this summer, early into the fall. So Tyrell Smith is going to get a look there in camp. Smith has seen limited looks in practice, but by all indications, he's looked pretty good in the past for the Hokies. So I think sliding Smith in there may not be a good sign for Osterloh, who finally looked like he was going to have a spot open up for him to tackle. But the fact of the matter is he just hasn't really stayed healthy throughout his tenure at Tech and hasn't been able to seize a spot permanently on the offensive line. He has seen some time there, some playing time over the last few seasons, but hasn't seen much at all, just due to the fact they had a rock-solid right side, as you mentioned, with Augie Conte and Jonathan McLaughlin. But Osterloh is a huge guy, 6'6", 6'7", and he would fit in nicely at tackle if he were able to stay healthy. But I think right now it's Tyrell Smith to lose, at least going into camp.
27 signed in this 2017 class the first week of February, 9 already in camp. That's a pretty large number for really any school. But specifically, there's 3 guys that Tech fans are extremely excited about that were listed in that category of athlete when they were signed. But Mike, it appears as though they've probably found a home. Maybe one guy is so versatile that we may see him on offense and defense.
Yeah, so Tech has 8 early enrollees in total when you consider Hendon Hooker and the cast of others. But the 3 I want to talk about specifically are Khalil Pimpleton, Terius Wheatley, and Caleb Farley. Terius Wheatley, who is the son of former NFL running back, former Michigan star Tyrone Wheatley, is going to get a look at running back. He came in as an athlete. It's not a huge surprise that he's going to get most of his reps at the running back position here, at least initially for the Hokies. The pedigree there, coupled with the fact that he put up the stats that he did in the high school level up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where the family remained after Tyrone Wheatley had his NFL stint, and then all the ties back to the Michigan area just because of his tenure there playing at school there. So Terius Wheatley is a stud, big time running back, a guy who can make an impact early for the Hokies, because look, the fact of the matter is the running back position has really been in flux there for Tech. They have a number of guys who are able to contribute, but the rotation hasn't been hammered down over the past couple of years. So with Trayvon McMillan unable to seize that role on a full-time basis, and the fact that Justin Fuente and his offense likes to use a number of receivers and running backs year in and year out, bodes well for Terius Wheatley if he performs well here this spring to put himself in position to get some early playing time this fall. Khalil Pimpleton at receiver, 5'7", 5'8", about 155 pounds, absolutely a redshirt candidate this fall. But he's going to get an extended look here in camp because the Hokies' primary slot receiver, C.J. Carroll, is not going to be participating in spring practices due to recovery from off-season surgery. So Pimpleton will get a look at the slot receiver position that he'll ultimately garner here at some point down the line. And it'll be good to see how he plays in his first collegiate action here as practices open up here this week. And then finally, a guy who's extremely versatile, a guy that the coaching staff's really high on, that was listed as an athlete that's coming in, and a lot of different people projected him as a wide receiver initially, but it looks like he's going to be listed as a defensive back here, at least to start spring camp. And that's Caleb Farley. He's an athlete, 6'2", 6'3", great speed, good size already. They have him listed as a defensive back currently because while the Hokies starters are very strong on the defensive side of the ball, primarily in the secondary, they don't have a ton of depth there behind the starters. So if someone were to get hurt, Farley would absolutely slide into either safety or maybe even cornerback to get some playing time here early on. He projects as a receiver as well. The coaching staff wants to see what he's able to do with the ball in his hands because of how fast he is and how exciting of a player he is on film. He's one of the guys to watch certainly throughout spring camp, and a guy that the coaching staff's extremely high on. So it kind of mirrors the Greg Stroman situation back in 2013 when he first arrived in Blacksburg. He came in as an athlete as well, played receiver and defensive back in high school. Frank Beamer and his coaching staff wasn't sure how to use Stroman, so they used him on both sides of the ball there initially. Justin Fuente and his staff come in, and they weren't going to, show their hand either way, but ultimately Greg Stroman nailed down a spot at cornerback this past season for the Hokies before he got hurt, and had one of his best seasons since he's arrived in Blacksburg, playing primarily as a cornerback. So we've seen this story before. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out with Caleb Farley, but I think with the Hokies and how the coaching staffs have handled, players like this in the past and their versatility, it'll be nice to see how this works out with the new coaching staff and Justin Fuente, if they hammer down a spot for Farley here early, or if he ends up playing both sides of the ball initially until they find out what to do with him. But I think they absolutely want his athleticism on the field. And I wouldn't be surprised if he plays right away this fall, whether it be on offense or on defense as a rotational player.
Mike, I know you're also a little bit intrigued by the Colorado product, Dalton Keene, and how he could eventually be worked into the offense and utilized.
I am. I mean, Dalton Keene's 6'5", 6'6", big guy already, 260, 270 pounds, a guy who has great hands, but it's also a very good blocker on film. And he could slide into the H-back role. They have him and Lacita Smith. And Lacita Smith is not on campus yet in Blacksburg, but he'll be there this fall. And the Hokies are hoping to use him as well as a blocking back type tight end, H-back position. And I think Keene and Lacita Smith are two guys to watch out for here. While Keene is the only one in spring practice who will be participating in the spring practices for the Hokies, I think both Keene and Smith could have a spot on the team this fall as a blocking back or maybe even a pass-catching tight end, which the Hokies haven't really had a conventional hand-in-the-ground tight end who can go out and catch passes in quite a few years. So, really dating back to Ryan Malik, which was, 2011, 2012. So it'll be interesting to see Dalton Keene's development, because I think Chris Cunningham, who had 8 catches last year, 5 of which went for touchdowns, he wasn't your primary hand-in-the-ground tight end. He's much more in the mold of Bucky Hodges. And while I think Chris Cunningham will get a ton of playing time this fall, I think he'll more likely be in the Hodges mold when they will split him out and have him be more of a pass-catching weapon as a receiver more than a tight end. So Dalton Keene and Lacita Smith are two names to watch out for, but Dalton Keene is the one to watch out for here in spring camp, as he's already on campus.
Mike McDaniel from inside the ACC and Fighting Gobbler getting us set with Virginia Tech football with the Hokies at the outset of spring practice. hoping to start what they consider to be a journey back to the ACC championship game. Mike, we appreciate the time as always.
All right. Thanks, Mark.